Welcome, everybody, to Dead Talk Live. Today, we have something we've never really done before. We are talking to a film critic. I want to welcome Martin Carr, who is a Rotten Tomatoes certified film and TV critic, to our show. Martin, thank you for joining us today. How are you doing?
I'm very good, John. Thank you for inviting me in on the show, and I'm looking forward to having a chat. It's nice to have someone else ask me questions for a change.
You know, I This is going to be interesting because you and I are sort of in the same field with me in this show, and we're in the business of providing publicity.
Mm.
Whether in your respect as a critic, whether you like a project or don't like a project, it's all publicity in the end. And whether it's a negative review or a positive review, it really does have a positive outcome for everybody involved. So before we get started, tell us first, how did you get involved in writing?
I guess maybe I started watching films. I'm slightly older than some, so I started around the explosion of the VHS video market back in the 80s. I was about 10, maybe 11. And I just got swept up with the whole having your cinema in your front room and being able to essentially have access to films which you wouldn't otherwise have.
Exactly.
And it sort of became an obsession, and it sort of tended to take over things. And this is more of an extension of that, I guess.
And a lot of people don't know this, but when VHS won the VHS Betamax Wars, where a lot of people are like, what
Mm,
the hell is that? But anyway, when a movie came out from theater to VHS release, it was $100. That's how
mm,
crazy it was. It was like $100 here in the United States to buy a film newly released on VHS. Now, as I mentioned, you are a certified Rotten Tomatoes critic. A lot of people,
mm,
when they go to Rotten Tomatoes, which is like the number one site for reviews, they will read reviews, but they don't really know what goes behind their selection of someone to become a certified Rotten Tomatoes reviewer. They have
mm.
really strict standards in place, which a lot of people don't know about. So, why don't you tell our audience what those standards are and how difficult is it to become a Rotten Tomatoes critic?
So I mean, I had to look this up because I was looking at the critical criteria some years ago. Um, so they've got four standards. They have insight, which is it's to do with it's to do, I think, with like the quality of the content in terms of have you got a distinctive voice,
Yeah,
and have you got a certain perspective? And it's sort of about having a measured and sort of knowledgeable perspective on a film or a television show.
yeah.
Um, you also have audience. So what they want is somebody who writes reviews to have the widest possible audience in terms of their content can get to, in terms of their opinion can maybe can maybe influence people. And then obviously you have the others, which are more to do with the discipline of writing and
Hmm.
watching films, which is to do with quality, which comes down to your grammar, your structure, your syntax, your knowledge of English, and how you incorporate that into a review in terms of, shall we say, when you're writing
Yeah.
and how you go about researching stuff.
Eh,
And then obviously the final one is dedication. Are you consistent? Do you consistently review for different publications? If so, what are they? And do you fit in with the other team, with the other team players, which everybody on the site is, I assume, is viewed in the same way.
yeah, and anybody out there who wants to become a film television critic, you can't just start writing and have your articles picked up and posted on an online publication, and then after a month apply to become a certified critic on Rotten Tomatoes. You have to do it, I believe, for a minimum of 2 years. So
You
you,
do, yeah.
yeah, you definitely have to have the work behind you, and it does take dedication. You got to put to
Mm,
work, you got to rough it out, and then you apply and hopefully get in. Now, you do both film and television. When you're
mm.
doing, whether it's a film or a brand new television show, do you employ different criteria for those two?
I guess you do. It because they are essentially, although the gap between television and film is has sort of got slightly closer together these days. In terms, I think that's down to production values and
Mm-hmm.
down to the storytelling. So you have film and television, as I say, they're close together. Um, but for myself, yeah, TV, it's what's the easiest way to describe it? I guess I research things the same way anyone else does. So I will, with when it comes to film, I will look at the director, I'll look at the stars, I'll look at what people have done previously. I will see if it's engaging, if it's interesting to me. I mean, ultimately, it has to engage me. I can't do anything which is boring. I wouldn't do anything just for the money,
Yeah.
because that's not why I do it.
No.
Um, Television is more of a commitment because obviously it's longer. Films are inevitably they max out. I believe The Irishman is about 3.5 hours, but
Mm-hmm.
most of them are about an hour and 40 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a lesser commitment in terms of watching, whereas a television show can be up to 10 hours long, and it really does require a different skill set, I think, and it requires more brevity, but still getting the same depth of knowledge and sort of insight across. Whereas a film, as I say, you can reflect on what other films the director has done,
Mm-hmm.
what other films the stars have been in, and maybe incorporate that in terms of characters they've created in the past. So there's lots of little things
Yeah, like take what
which
they've
I do.
done in their past, whether it's a
Mm,
director or an actor, and compare it to that body of work
mm,
that you are currently reviewing. Now, not everybody's
mm,
going to agree. So there are almost all the times when you're writing a review, there's going to be X amount of people who have a differing
mm.
opinion than yours. Now, when you come up a case where the vast majority of people's critics, like yourself, opinion varies from your own opinion. Do you feel any kind of pressure when you're in the minority in your opinion?
Not really. I really don't. I'll put my hand on my heart and I will say that before I write anything or watch anything, if I know that I'm going to be covering it, I won't read anyone else's reviews.
Okay.
Um, and it's not because I'm precious about my work or I have anything against anybody else who's out there, trying to make it work and has their own opinion or are passionate about what they say. It's because I don't want anyone else's opinion to color my judgment
All right.
ultimately, and that's what it comes down to. I want to go into it fresh. I want to go into it not. I avoid any trailers if I possibly can, and I will avoid as much outside influences as I possibly can with
Wow.
before I begin anything
Now,
really.
I have interviewed a lot of filmmakers and actors, and they pretty much
Mm,
all have the same theme. I do not look at reviews. Because they know that people are going to have their own opinions. As a critic, how do you feel about that? That the filmmakers, the actors, don't generally read critics' reviews.
I sort of I can understand it because as much as filmmakers and actors and people actually directly in front and behind the camera, as much as they say that maybe they don't care. I think people passionately, I think inherently they must care
Yeah,
deeply because they're committing, up to 5, 10 years of their lives, especially if you're going from a project which is going from a concept from development and actually into production. It can be a very long time. So I think to a certain extent, people who tell critics or they tell other people, interviewers like yourself and myself, that they don't care or they don't read them.
yeah,
There has to be a little bit of
yeah. It's
there's
human
a bit of
nature.
porky pie involved there
Yeah,
because you've got to care, you've got to be passionate,
yeah,
otherwise why are you doing it?
yeah. It's part of human nature to be curious and to see what other people think,
Mm,
because ultimately you want your work to be appreciated by the audience, in any
you
form
do,
of
yeah.
art. Now, how do here we are in the boom, the height of the internet age. Everybody's sharing their opinions online, from movies to
Mm.
television shows. How do you view your role as a film critic in this machine, this entertainment industry cog? How do you view, because you are a part of the entertainment industry, all right? inside the industry, you may be referred to as press, media, whatever, but everything comes together to make up the industry. How do you view a film critic's role in the motion picture entertainment industry?
Um, I'm not entirely sure. It's an incredibly grey area, and you're going to get a different answer from everybody you ask on this particular question. I think. I think some people inside the industry would say that criticism in this form is irrelevant and it doesn't matter. I disagree. I think um, I think critics or journalists or whatever name you want to put us under in terms of an umbrella. I think our opinions are as valuable as we want to make them. I think there's no denying if you look at the amount of entertainment websites, you look at the amount of business which is driven through criticism, the amount of literature that gets published in the name of criticism, the amount of universities, colleges, schools that create
Mm-hmm.
works and academic works, and I mean, this incorporates such a wide gamut of different disciplines, and also it can't, especially as you know, the amount of effort, the amount of work, the amount of discipline and dedication it takes to actually get to even my position, to
Mm-hmm.
my point, and I'm nowhere near where I would like to be
Yeah,
because we're never as good as we want to be, right?
exactly.
I think I think you can't say that doesn't matter. You can't say that it's not an important part of the industry because PRs reach out to us all the time. They offer us stuff, and we're reliant on them. They're reliant on us, and the industry is reliant as a whole on the opinion. They need to have positive and passionate opinions out there. Otherwise, they're never going to put bums on seats and never going to get box office.
Exactly.
You know.
Uh, my belief, my personal belief is when it comes to public relations, and you and I deal with PR people all day, every day.
Mm.
Yeah, you promote a project, a film, a television show, whatever. You get the interviews, you watch it. We get screeners, we get to see stuff before it hits the general public. And, we share our opinions. In my case, I do interviews, you do reviews. How impactful do you think film critic reviews are for, let's say, an opening weekend to a film? Do they make a noticeable difference being in this industry for as long as you have, or do they have little impact? That's a
Again,
difficult one.
the it is a difficult it is a difficult one, but thank you for asking. Um, Honestly, I don't think it makes as much of a difference as maybe it used to.
Yeah.
I think because there's such a proliferation of information on the internet and there's so many different opinions um out there from people who obviously run professional sites and make it their business to be part of the industry, and everybody else. There are so many voices shouting so loudly
Yeah.
that to try and say that it has as much impact as it once did, I think would be short-sighted.
Mm-hmm.
I unfortunately, I think so much of the movie business is down to numbers. It's down to corporate decision making. In and I mean, obviously, it has to be, but also, you build you have your fan bases, which the obvious example is the MCU.
Yeah.
Um, and people will go and see those films irrespective of what someone may write, what someone may say, and the PR machine which surrounds it. Um, where it does make a difference, I think, more noticeably is around the festival circuit,
Mm-hmm.
where you've got Sundance and you've got Tribeca and you have London Film Festival. At the moment, you've got the Cannes Film Festival going on.
Yeah.
I think it's more important and more impactful for maybe small indie dramas and films which otherwise wouldn't get a large audience.
Mm-hmm.
That's where a critical voice, which has an opinion and has a perspective and can back it up with knowledge which matters. I think that's where it makes a real difference
I
in
completely
the
agree
industry.
with
I
you.
think the tentpole stuff, maybe not so much.
I completely agree with you. When it comes to like the MCU, like you mentioned, what reviewers say, the movie's going to make its hundreds of millions of dollars, regardless of how much, promotion goes into it. But when it comes to the independent film industry, they are reliant on PR, on reviews,
Mm.
negative or positive. It doesn't matter. They are reliant
Yeah, that's
on
true.
on reviews. Now, people might be surprised to know not every film out there has a review on Rotten Tomatoes, for example. When it comes to you, what are some of the personal criteria you use to decide whether, you know what, this film is not even worthy of a review?
With with me, it comes down to not so much time, but I need to be grabbed by the subject.
Mm-hmm.
I need to be maybe it's a sophomore effort from a debut director. Um, maybe it's a different way of approaching a certain genre or a certain subject. Um, it could be the trailer. I know I said I stayed away from trailers,
Mm-hmm.
um, which is which is true in the main. I stay away from the mainstream stuff. But if I see an indie film or I see some buzz around an indie project, I will, I'll search it out. I'll campaign to do it. I did that for Coda, which obviously it made a bit of
Oh
a
yeah,
splash a few years ago at the Sundance Festival.
big yeah.
Um, and also I watched After Sun, which is London Film Festival,
Mm-hmm.
and they were amazing films. But in terms of how I'm very random, and I'm lucky enough that I can be quite random because films aren't really the thing I focus on primarily in terms of my reviews.
Is
So I can pick and choose, which I'm
you
quite
so
lucky
you
enough
would
to
say
do.
TV is more of what you prefer?
I do because I think because I find it I don't it's not that I find it more interesting. I think that because there's less competition for television reviewers than there is for film reviewers. I think that's what it both basically comes down to. But it's also the fact that, as I said right at the beginning, what I think the gap between film and television in terms of quality, in terms of storytelling, and in terms of production values, all those things which are on the top tick list in terms of what you would expect from a film are now very much present in television. And I don't see the drop off. I mean, there is a tremendous glut of content,
Mm-hmm.
um, but
And the bottom line
there's
for
some.
that is that TV
Mm,
shows are a lot more expensive to produce.
yeah,
You're talking about
yeah.
little mini movies, what anywhere from
Mm.
42 to 60 minutes, and you're going to have at least 6 to 8 episodes in a season. It's beyond the reach of the independent filmmaker right now.
It is an interesting point. I read somewhere. In fact, I read several places. Prime Video just released Citadel, which is making a
Hmm.
big splash because it's
Yeah.
executive produced by the Russo brothers. Word around the campfire is that cost $50 million an episode after reshoots, and that's a 10 episode show. So you do the math. I mean,
Yeah.
that's
I mean, I
ridiculous.
heard
So
the Lord of the Rings show on Prime as well was somewhere close to
mm,
the $1 billion mark. I don't know if that was accurate or not, but that's crazy.
yeah,
Now let's talk
it
about.
it is crazy, but it's all on the screen, John. It's all on the screen.
I know, and most of that is in post production. Let's talk about genres, okay?
Mm.
Everyone has their favorite genre that they appreciate more than other genres. Do you stay away from certain genres because you know you don't enjoy them and they might influence and solicit a negative review from you that is biased because you just don't like that genre?
Sheila, I'll tell you a little secret. I'm such a lady, of such a girl when it comes to horror films. I am so squeamish. You wouldn't believe it. So, and I was having a conversation with my brother who can sit through anything and watch anything. And I said, look, I feel like I'm missing out on having a critical opinion on a very important genre in cinema. And he's going, look, it just because I can do it doesn't mean everyone can do it. And I'm like, and because I don't have that breadth of knowledge, I can't watch a horror movie because I don't have I don't have the Rolodex of information in my head
Mm-hmm.
to go, oh, that's relevant to that's relevant to that, relevant to that, and track it back through history if I wanted to.
Okay.
And because I don't have that, I can't say that that's the thing I stay away from. Because I physically can't.
That makes perfect sense, and I applaud you
Yeah.
for saying that. Horror is at a real high right now, and it has been since, I mean, COVID. COVID, surprisingly, when COVID hit, uh, horror viewership skyrocketed for some reason. You would think it would, go down. It didn't. It
Mm.
skyrocketed. Now, obviously, you have to be a fan of cinema, TV, to do what you do.
Yeah.
Is there a way that you remove the fan aspect and try to be as objective as possible when you're doing a review?
Yeah, well, the thing is, it's funny. I'm not a fan of any one. Like, again, go back to the MCU. I'm not a fan of superhero movies, which, people will argue maybe they're not superhero movies. If you want to go into the subtext, another conversation, another time. But yeah, it's nothing. There's nothing. Sorry, I've completely lost my train of thought. Can you repeat the question? Sorry.
No, no, no problem. It's about how do you remove the fan aspect when you're watching a film. Let's say you said you're not
Yeah.
a big fan of superhero movies. Let's say you are
Mm.
watching a series, a project, whatever that you are a big fan of, and you want to do an
Mm.
objective review. Do you have a process of removing that fan aspect when you're watching it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for me, it's about the technical stuff. So I know about screenplays, I know about story, I know about characters. I know I've watched enough bad films to know what a good film looks like, and that's something else which is really important. I think you need to go and watch. You know, there could be an argument to say that there's no such thing as a bad film, but I disagree. There
I
there
do
is, and
too.
they are
Yeah.
out there, but they can be a pleasure as much as anything else. So you need to go out there and you need to fundamentally know, I think, what a bad and a good film look like. And I know all the technical stuff, and for me, um, it's how you approach a rom-com differently. For example,
Hmm.
um, there's a perfect example is there was a TV show that I watched, which is on Paramount Plus at the moment called The Flat Share,
Hmm.
and that is a rom-com, but it's not. It's about two people who can't afford to rent their own flat in London, so they share it at different times of the day, and that's it. And the rom-com comes together because ultimately they're not communicating face to face. It's a really clever way of doing a rom-com.
That is.
So it's not about the whistles and bells of the show and the technical stuff. So I'm not I'm not a fan enough of any one genre to be blinded, and from my opinion, to be biased ultimately.
That is awesome. I can't believe we're almost at 25 minutes. Martin, thank you so much for coming on here and sharing a part of this industry that, besides the reviews that people read, they really don't know what's under the surface. And I hope that the people that are going to watch this in the days to come really get that insight because I feel a lot has been shared. I want to thank you. For those of you guys that are interested in reading Martin's reviews, are available on his site, martincarr.co.uk. His reviews are also on major publications like We Got This Covered, and it's also on, we have some of his stuff on our publication, Dead Talk News, and a lot of other publications. So his work is out there. Check it out. You can see it all on his website. Martin, I want to thank you so much. Thank you for doing what you do. I want to thank our audience, those of you who are tuning in this afternoon, if you're in the US, and the majority of you who'll be watching this later on. Martin, thank you again on behalf of Martin and myself. Stay safe, good afternoon, and stay walking. Bye, everybody.